on. To open up Illustrator, you can click on the little icon down at the very bottom of your screen. This is the dock, and notice when I move my mouse down it pops up, and I can click on it. And the first thing we'll need to do is to create a new document. In all the Adobe software, it's the same process. You can go to File and down to New. What are these right here? What is a little Command N? Yeah, those are our keyboard shortcuts. So pay attention to these. If you want to work a little faster, the Command key, it looks like a little clover flower, it's right next to your spacebar. So if I hit Command N, it'll bring up our New Document dialog box from here. The first thing you do is you set up how you want your document to look. Usually the size of it, maybe the number of pages that you need, different things for this one. I think for this project, we're going to keep it very simple. We're going to have just one artboard, and the size of it's going to be letter size. If you start playing around with this, you can see there's some predefined sizes. What's the size of a letter sheet of paper? Do y'all know? 8.5. 8.5 by 11. Here's your typical sheet. What about a tabloid? Have you ever seen a tabloid sheet of paper? Tabloid's a little bit bigger. I don't have one immediately. I know there's some in the printer. A tabloid is twice the size of a letter sheet of paper. It's actually 11 by 17. Took two 8.5 pieces, put them together, you got 17 by 11. So tabloids are usually used for posters, a lot of the posters you see hanging up, or for newsletters or things that have to be folded in half. But whatever you choose, here's your width and your height. You can type that in as well. We're not going to worry about bleed, but we are going to worry about the color mode that we're going to work in. There's two kind of color modes to be aware of. I'm going to speak very generally about it now. Cmyk and Rgb. Every printer in the world, just about every printer, especially the ones we have here, use 4 colors of ink when printing. Cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So C for cyan, magenta is kind of red, yellow, and K for black from there. From those 4 colors, you can print just about any color that you need. Now there are some that are more tricky than others. RGB, what do you think that stands for? Red, green, and blue. Those are the colors that your screen tends to use. So if you got, how many of y'all like gotten really, really close to a television set? You saw the little pixels that are there. Yeah, I used to do that, especially before high definition television. All the pixels on a screen, whether it's a computer screen, TV screen, use red, green, and blue colors. So the color mode I'm working on depends on how I'm going to use the graphic. If it's printed, you want to use CMYK. If it's going to be put on a web page or be put up on a screen to be broadcast, RGB is what we want to work in. For this project, we're going to keep it CMYK. Everything else, I'm going to keep it default, keep it the same. And this will bring up our page that we're working on. Alright, so let's learn a little bit of Illustrator. Give you a quick overview. If you need a tool, your toolbox is usually this over here on the left-hand side. You can move your toolbox around. You can hover your mouse over a tool and get the name of it. So each one, of course, when I click on it, will select that tool. The tools we'll be using for this first part of the project are these little shapes tools. If I click and hold, see how there's a little triangle at the bottom? This will give me all of the different shapes I can work with. And all I did was click and hold my mouse to pull that open. If I click on this little outside edge, it'll pop it out, and now I can easily have its own little palette just with that shape. Whenever you select a tool or something you're working with, pay attention to what's up here at the top. These are the options that you can use when using that tool. So for instance, I've got a little rectangle. To create a rectangle, I can click and drag. Just as simple as that, right? Making a rectangle just by clicking and dragging. If I needed to change up my rectangle, so if I wanted to change the color, if I wanted to change the size or different things, this is where the options up here at the top come in handy. Some of the colors you can find up here at the very top right hand side. If I click the down arrow, here's our swatches. These are pre-made colors, so these are kind of common colors that are used a lot. This first one is our fill color. Makes sense for the fill. It fills it in. Fills in that color with whatever you had selected. This second color swatch is called the stroke color. Whenever you hear the term stroke, think of outline. It's the outline of whatever object or whatever line that you've drawn. And it can also have a color as well. So if I wanted it to be, let's make it light blue. little difficult to see, but there's a small blue line that's around it as well. If I wanted to make that stroke a lot bigger, here's where the stroke dimensions are. And strokes are usually measured in points. You can increase it by there. You can see it's getting a lot larger from that. Other things that you'll play around with, here's the X and Y position. Here's the width and the height of whatever object that you have to work with as well. The other tool that you'll mainly be using will be your selection tools, and these are the most important tools in Illustrator. You've got two different selections. For those of y'all who watch the videos, what's the two?
Selection and direct selection.
Selection and direct selection. Black arrow, white arrow. What does the black arrow do?
It's more for moving objects and general resizing.
Exactly. With my black arrow tool, I can click on an object. You can see it'll light up the edges, and I can move it around. If I move my cursor right outside the edge, see how it turns into kind of a curved arrow? If I click and drag now, I can actually rotate my object. So the selection tool allows me to quickly and easily move things around from there. What is the direct selection tool, the white arrow? Reshaping. Specifically, what does it reshape? Anchor points, the individual points. So remember I said vector is all about the points. If you want to move a point around, not just an object, use your white arrow. Watch what happens when I move my cursor right on top of a point. See how it kind of lights up? There it is. Look at the very bottom of it. Lights up. When I click on it, I've got just that point selected. So now I can do fancy things like this, moving around just that one point. If I hold down my Shift key, I can add on to my selection, and now I've got both of these points selected, and I can move both of them around at the same time. So this is the essence of making a vector artwork. I'm telling the computer, hey, here's 4 different points, and I'm telling those points where to go, and then how to format it. What color should it be? What's the fill color, stroke color, those type of things. The last thing to know are these palettes off to the right-hand side usually. These give you a little bit more control over your document or whatever object that you're working on. Some of them you'll use more often than others. For instance, the layers palette, which is usually down here at the bottom. I'm going to click and drag it off. You can do that. You can resize a palette, or you can redock it back down here at the bottom. If you don't see a palette, or somebody's closed out your toolbox, or you can't find anything, here's an important thing to remember. The window drop-down menu. This lists out all the possible palettes that you'll work with. So for instance, there's my color palette. It's got a checkbox because my color palette's already open. If I'm missing my tools, there's my tools. If I click on it, it'll just close it off, and now I've closed out my tools. So a lot of times students will say, oh, I can't find my tools, I can't find anything. Window drop-down menu is where you need to go from that one. Any questions on that? I know I'm flying through to give you the overview on working with this. Okay, so the first thing you do, once you create your new document, we're going to be creating a series of little squares from these different shapes. Not just any square, but rounded rectangle squares. We've got a tool that works just with this. You saw with the square, all you got to do is click and drag, and that'll give you your shape that you have. What's another way of making a shape? What if I wanted a specific sized shape?
You just click on the screen and type in the dimensions.
Exactly. I've got my Shapes tool. I can click once. This will bring up a little options box, and from here I can type in a specific size that I need for this particular shape. And I believe these are going to be about 1 by 1 inch. So 1 inch by 1 inch. The corner radius is the little roundedness of it, and I think it should be about 0.25 inches. When I say OK, now I've got it created right here. Of course, it remembered how my last formatting. So let's make this a little bit smaller. There we go. Here's another fun thing to know. How do you zoom in? How do you get a little bit closer or farther away? There's a couple of ways. There's a tool. Your little zoom tool looks like a magnifying glass. I can click on it, and it'll zoom in, and I can actually see what I'm working with from here. Another thing is, here's a keyboard shortcut you may want to write down. Command plus and Command minus. If I hit Command plus, it will zoom in. If I hit Command minus, zoom out. So that's kind of a quick little thing to remember when you're moving around and working on your document. Once I've got it created, I'm not going to follow the exact instructions, but I'll show you a few different things with it. we need to make multiple copies of this. One thing you can do is you can select your object, and of course you can go to Edit and Copy. What's the keyboard shortcut for copy? Command C. Same way on Windows if you're used to Windows. What's the keyboard shortcut for V? Or for paste? Command V. There you go. Just gave it to you. So Command Copy, Command Paste, exactly the same. Now there's some different types of paste. We'll get into those later. But if I copy an object, I can also paste it. And in general, we'll paste right in the middle of my board, and I can move it around from here. Another great thing to have, and this is why I love working in Illustrator, when I move things around, you see the little green line that's appearing? Those are called my smart guides. These are things that help me move objects either a specific distance or make sure I'm moving them straight across or straight up and down. So if I know I needed to move this straight down, it'll automatically snap to it, and it'll make sure that that's 90 degrees perpendicular. Same way if I go across this way. So if I get off of it, there we go, it's perfectly drawn this way. If I move it close to this object, actually I need to click on this one to remember it. Now let's see if it'll work. There we go. See how they're automatically lined up? Smart guides are a great thing to have turned on. If you don't see them, you can go to View, and there's smart guides checked off right there as well. The other thing I'll show you is how do you place something exactly where you need it to be on your screen. So let's say I needed, I'll move this out of the way, this object to be exactly 1 inch away from this edge. I'm going to turn on my rulers by going to View and Show My Rulers. And you can see my top edge right here is right at 0 and 0. So I'd like to move this so that it's about 1 inch away from this edge. So I'm going to select it. With it selected, check up here at the very top. I've got my X coordinates and my Y coordinates. I'm going to type in 1 inch. I'll tell you what, I'm going to set it right at 0, 0, just so we can see what's going to happen. 0, you can see it moves over to 0. And there it is right there. But it's not right on the edge. It's actually, the center point's right on the edge. Why did that happen? Exactly. The middle point, this point right here is set to 0, 0. That's my reference point. So I need to change up my reference point. I want it to be this point right here to be right on the edge. To change your reference point, this area right here is very important. See how the middle one is ticked off? It's filled in? If I was to click the top edge, now let's type in 0, 0. 0, tab over 0, and I can place it exactly where it needs to be from there. You're getting kind of understanding how vectors become very, very powerful for creating perfect, very crisp, very almost mathematical type stuff. Okay, so I know in your project it's going to ask you to set it off probably I think 1/2 inch or 1 inch from the edge. So with that reference point changed, this gives me the ability to type in 0.5 inches and place it exactly where it needs to be. Same way for this one. I'm going to delete that. Let's make a copy of this one as well. So how would I make a copy and a paste? Command C, Command V. So that's the old-fashioned way. I'm going to give you an even quicker way of making a copy of something. Find your Option key on your keyboard. That's going to be a very, very important key to remember when using a lot of these tools. If you got your Selection tool, hold down your Option key, and see how it turns into a double arrow? Now when I click and drag, it automatically makes a copy of whatever I had selected. So this is a quick, easy way of making multiple copies of different things that I'm working on. If I need to select them, I can click and drag over them, and you can see they're all selected. I've got a bounding box going over all of them. I can move them all around, I can rotate them, I can scale them, do whatever I need to from there. If I need to delete it, simple as selecting it, hitting the delete key. I'm going to show you one more quick way of getting even faster copies, more precise copies. You've got it selected. I'm going to go to Object, down to Transform. In this case, we're going to move it over just a little bit. These transformations are kind of common things that you'll do to objects. So moving an object is something very, very common. And let's say I needed to move it over a specific distance. Well, this gives me the ability to move it horizontally or vertically that distance. So let's say I need to move it 1 inch over but no vertical movement. I'm going to click on preview, and this will give me an idea of how it's being moved. Maybe we'll move it a little bit further. Let's do it 2 inches. And that'll move it over from there. With preview checked off, I can see exactly where it's going to be. If I hit OK, it's just going to move it. But if I hit copy, now I've got a copy of it moved over that exact distance from there. All cool? Here's the next thing. If I want to do it again, go to transform again. What's the keyboard shortcut? Command D. It's going to do it again. It's going to make another copy exactly 2 inches away. Hit Command D. It'll do it again from there. So Illustrator is kind of intuitive on what you want to do. If you do something once, you can do it again, and it'll automatically do it again for you that way. If I wanted to make a quick copy of all of these, got them selected, what key do I hold down? Option key. Option, I can drag it down. I got my guides working for me, and I can automatically change out and make several copies of those from there. Have I lost everybody? All cool? Very, very simple. Very easy things to do from here. Once you got them all formatted, the book will go in a little more detail about how to set these up. The next thing we'll need to do is we need to place, where'd my file go? We need to place each one of these, there we go, symbols into our file. Here's how we're going to do that. To place an image outside from an external file, you go to File, down to Place, and then you find the file that you need. I know I've got it on my desktop right here. And let's see, yeah, Project Files. So I'm going to choose the Biohazard first. We'll hit Place, and then it's placed inside of here. And I can scale it down, or I can move it to exactly where it needs to be. In Illustrator, when you want to retrace something, it's very important to place it in one area, then you work on top of it to make the tracing. Let's do another one that's probably a little bit better. Do place. Ooh, it's a complex one. Hey, that's an easy one right there. So do you see the shapes that could be made up of? Simple lines, simple circle. Move from there. And of course you can scale it down to work on. Another way of placing something, especially if you're going to be tracing it off, is to make it on a transparent or a trace layer. So File, let's do it one more time. This time I'll do the fire icon. This time I'm going to choose Template. Template will drop the opacity of it, and it'll place it in there so that it's on its own little layer. There we are. In the very back. If I try to select it, well, see, I can't click on it. Let's check out our Layers palette. See how in layer 1 I've got all my little icons that I created? If I place something as a template, it has its own layer that's underneath the layer that I'm working on. So if I need to swap it up, I need this fire layer to be on top of it, I can click on a layer and drag it on top. Now it's on top of there. I still can't click on it. I want to be able to move it around. Here's the last thing that I'll show you for today. In the Layers palette, and this will be true for Photoshop too, you've got a lock icon. If anything is ever locked down, that just simply means you can't do anything to that layer. So to click on it will unlock it. Now I'm able to move it and place it exactly where it needs to be, or to scale it, or to do something to it. If I need to lock it down again, got it locked, and now I can go about working on my other vectors from that. All cool? Y'all excited to jump in and start trying it out? Okay, this is going to be project 1. Like I said, if you don't have the files, I'm going to give them to you.